This is the EnT podcast, conversations about education, technology, and culture, with Dr. Doug Reed and Dr. Matt Stranick. Thank you for joining us.
My name is Dr. Doug Reed, and I am located on Abagway, the traditional and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people.
My name is Dr. Matthew Stranick, and I am located in Menakwisk in St. John, New Brunswick, which is situated on the traditional and unceded territory of the Wolastoqiyik Maliseet people.
Hey everyone, happy Sunday. If you do indeed happen to be checking this out on a Sunday, it is, point of fact, Sunday for us here at the EnT podcast. We were just doing the maritime thing wherein you sort of jaw quizzically and or existentially about the weather. And I thought, man, this is producible internet content. So we should... I'll just say the question, not the question of the podcast, but certainly the question of the podcast moment. I was asking the inestimable Dr. Doug Reed here as to whether he are getting a shit ton of weather, to use a term, in PEI right now, or perhaps even generally over the past weekend. I can say that we are, in fact, here in St. John, New Brunswick, where I am, getting a shit ton of weather. Anything further to add to this, Bud, before we dive into the show?
I prefer buttload of weather, because buttload is an actual unit of measurement. But other than that, no, I got nothing to add there.
Well, alrighty then. And the only reason it's even remotely a thing, EdTech reference, keeping it relevant, is in fact that we were stymied. We tried this before. We were going to do this Saturday. We were going to do 2 episodes in a row. They're still thematically linked, folks, but we're going to execute on one of them now and then follow up on the other one in the near future. It's all about establishing wider context. Part of the reason we were stymied, sketchy maritime internet. And so hence the quasi-existential aspect of the deal, like, well, is it really worth it to try and invest some time if we're going to get, a blowout on the IT routers and servers and what have yous and whatevers? But on we boldly go. And Doug, why don't you just, before I get us further into the weeds, why don't you tell us what we're talking about today, bud?
Today, for me, is a celebration. Today is about celebrating success in education. I believe this is the 50th episode that we have put together. So we need to celebrate. We deserve to celebrate. And I assume that the stuff in your background, that are fireworks. I hope they're fireworks.
Fireworks on the planet Mars. I just, it's like beyond the earthly realm, but weirdly, in order to conceptualize a non-earthly realm, we have to use earthly referent points. So, yeah, man. To quote or paraphrase Lionel Richie, oh, what a feeling when you're dancing on the ceiling, which is how we are, folks, on this 50th of these swell episodes. So I've got the notes here, Doug. Did you want to throw anything in terms of beyond what you've already provided in terms of personal context, or do you want to sort of start going into the references?
I'm just so excited because when we started this, did we really know what we were doing? It was, let's give it a go. Let's give it a try.
Pish and posh. I'll say I was extremely motivated to have something productive in whatever fashion that I could actually legitimately say was representing like something good from my professional and technical ability at a point when I was feeling lower than I ever have about my career and myself as a professional person, among even other stuff. So for me, just as I kind of personally kind of reflect back and look at the overall trajectory of the show, I see it as going from a standpoint of pretty harsh uncertainty with what I was going through. And now I kind of got more of a routine established for whatever that's worth. And I feel like I'm practicing now within my career stuff that I think is just really cool and useful and relevant, is going to be helping me in all kinds of ways, both presently and in the longer term. So I guess it's nice to kind of, be pleased with where we are at a certain milestone-ish kind of number there, Doug, if I'm not, going too far out with that.
Yeah, anything with a 0 or a 5 is a milestone number, right? Numbers have power. So the 50 is pretty cool.
So then if I can ask Doug, I just kind of was like where I was at the time when this started, some 2-ish kind of years ago. I mean, if you kind of look back on what your situation was relative to now, do you see significant movement, or is it more like the subtle waves on a wider current? If you want.
What this does for me is it enriches my life. Whether if nobody, we don't have sponsors, nobody is paying us to hawk a product.
Not yet, they're not.
But having these conversations and engaging with people, I like when people say, "Oh, I listened to that episode, tell me more," and then I end up having that conversation online or on the sidewalk or wherever, and I really like that. That helped enrich what we're doing and how I'm living my life. It's super positive, and it gave me an excuse to invest in like a microphone, and it gave me an excuse to extend my research from when I did those podcasts back in 2006 and all of that. It was just it's just so wonderful. Like it almost feels like Thanksgiving or Christmas or my birthday or something. Like it's just awesome. This is so great.
Doug, for as long as I've known you, I know that you are a rational, inquisitive, and thoughtful human being. So when you're throwing out superlatives and hyperbolic sounding proclamations, I'm just like, man, I'm glad this kind of flickered as even a thing, because I guess for me as kind of a person who's interested in creativity, it's important to recognize, those little surges, the one differentiating the stuff that's worth following up on compared to the stuff that's just kind of flaky,
Yes.
And so when you can really see something that's tangibly gone from literally just a couple of wouldn't it be funny if we had a satirical podcast, kind of, jibber jabber on the Facebooks, on the Zucker suck machine, to something that's like, wow, we're both experienced, seasoned educators with advanced degrees, and this shit is pretty friggin' representative in various ways of like what's good and interesting about the field, like the broader field, and the fact that we're getting to bring other people into it. You're having these sidewalk conversations and people, in the hallway, community of practice style, keeping it relevant, grounded in the terminology of the field, such as there is. Friggin', I have gotta follow up with my booked, confirmed conversation guests, but we're hitting middle of March, and I had
awesome.
3 to 4 people tell me, yeah, middle of March sounds about right. So FYI, if you're one of those people, you can expect some follow-up, perhaps even before this thing gets to Camtasia-ish, now that I think about it. So yeah, man, I'm stoked. You're stoked. Hopefully we've stoked, whoever entities out there are checking this out. What do you say we look here at the Myers that you got? Because that's going way back in time, son.
Yeah, before we get there, I have a little thing I didn't tell you.
Oh, dang.
There's in the notes, the very first statement that I have in my notes is celebration is about acknowledging special moments of people's lives, both personal, professional, that are important to them. And that came out of one of the articles that we're going to talk about today.
Dang.
And if somebody sends me a message and says, I found it, it's in such and such article, do I have an Ed Non-Tech podcast sticker that I will throw in the mail and send to you?
Promotional and proactive and emotional.
Yeah.
We're putting some motion in your ocean, folks, because it's that kind of all-inclusive cruise.
And it looks just like that.
The legit merch.
For the people viewing it on YouTube, you saw what it looked like. For the people listening, it's awesome.
It's also all over our website. Every single episode has that awesome AI-assisted logo that Doug threw out some right around the time we got started, honestly, because as anyone can tell you, I'm speaking as a guy who's wearing a Descendants t-shirt with their typical Milo from Milo Ackerman, the caricature of the singer that's been on the cover of every one of their records, basically. There's a certain je ne sais quoi about visual branding. So that's when you're talking about punk music. The punk bands that are like serious, they got their fonts, okay? They got their like Alkaline Trio's got that sans serif, just anyway. Nevermind, the Bear, anyway, or Nevermind, Nirvana's. So I tend to get excited about fonts and visual branding.
Me too.
Part of the instructional design world that I was sort of part of with UNB for a while when I taught that online class for a few years running. So I wasn't sure what kind of tack you wanted to even take with this episode, because I sort of thought, maybe we're going to recollect about some of our successful projects and whatnot. And it's given me cause to think of like successful versus like unqualified success. There. Qualified versus unqualified. I think I got probably more to say about it in a bit, because it's just been kind of like following me around this afternoon while I've been getting ready for this. But I guess I just throw it over to you, pal. Should we go into the Myers now, or is there anything you wanted to add? Yep.
What I'm hoping to do is, if we can take a look at these four, and this is about success. We're both educators, so success in education matters, and we're having a little bit of celebration here now. So I think that all ties in together, and I would like to talk about some of our successes and some of the things that may not have been successful yet, or whatever, qualified successes, whatever the phrase.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting notion, right? So, yeah, so shades of it, because then, spoiler alert, folks, the next episode, because Doug kind of put these, again, similar to what we just did with the past couple episodes, couple weeks back, Doug kind of put two sets of notes on complementary topics together. So, spoiler alert: the next episode, which we'll be reporting early in the week, assuming Doug's amenable to that, is going to. It has the word debacle in the title, and I was like, okay. Over in this corner, successes. Over in that corner, debacle. Sun and the moon, yin and the yang, etc. So I'm quite thematically stoked about where this has been sort of, bringing us. It's an interesting approach, right? No time to stop trying new things. 50 episodes, man. You just put the gas on the pedal. Spoken as somebody who doesn't know how to pilot a car, but still. Anyway, dude. I'm just going to ramble, as you know. So what do we got to talk about now?
In 2027, or 1927, Myers.
1920.
So
100 years back, folks.
Yeah, 96 years ago. There was a quote called, "An atmosphere of all going well, when facts warranted, creates more energy in small children as well as adults." And one thing that really drew me to this is when I was a K-12 teacher, other people on staff had these teaching awards on their desks or at home. And like I worked in a small town. I went to a lot of people's houses, right? It's just what you do. And they had these cool little awards. And I'm like, wow, how did you get that? And then somebody said, yeah, you're not getting one. And I'm like, what? How do you, like, I know I'm new.
Not bad. No way. You may be surprised to know, Doug, I've encountered similar at various junctures in my career. Thanks for covering the slot, but boy, do we not want to set a precedent with you, son. Basically, like.
Oh, and mine was the other way. Mine was, what do you mean, why not? And the people said, oh, yeah, the new superintendent doesn't believe in rewards. They think, he thinks your pay is your reward.
I just naturally fail to attract such recognition, except as a cautionary tale. And I'm fine with that. I legit am fine with that. So the yin and the yang on that particular thing, I suppose. You're wearing your brightly colored thing. I'm wearing my dark colored thing. Sort of speaks to our underlying, our sartorial choices, folks. May speak to the underlying thought that each of us is bringing to this, thing, right? So interesting to find these contrast points, bud.
Yeah. So 100 years ago, people knew, professionals knew that all is going well, celebrations help. They help energy, they help motivate. It goes well. You can't just let it slide by. There's so few celebrations in life. Let's actually enjoy some and say, wow, good job. And I'm not talking about a pizza party after a big report is done, or
which is great, by the way. But,
oh yeah, I've never turned down ice cream cake or pizza at work. Right.
I do miss working at universities because they had like a lot of catered events. Like you never go hungry at a university function because they sure milked that catering joint they had on the campus. And anyway, nothing like a good meeting without rolls and salad, folks.
When I was at Edith Cowan, this is my new Edith Cowan sweatshirt that I was given. When I was there, I made a comment one time about exactly that. Wow, there's a lot of money for food.
They really throw that around at that particular nameless, totally hypothetical institution. Yeah. Like they had taxpayers' money, but whatever.
So I brought up in a meeting one time, I was like, wow, there's a lot of money for food here. Because they used to have an afternoon break at 2 o'clock. People took tea, and there was a tea room. And people were like, no, they made all these cuts. There was a tea lady. There was one lady, that was her job, was to come around with the cart and serve everybody tea every afternoon at 2 o'clock in the tea room.
When I was in the Middle East, the tea boy who worked at the bank or whatever, in the other countries, it seems like it's way more of a thing. Like here, people are just kind of like, back up, son, interesting. Do tell, man.
So we knew 100 years ago, and then I'm going to jump to 2012. I'm going to jump to Mulherron. We must celebrate what is achieved in public education.
Yep.
Right? I am assuming you have spent time in assemblies, normally in the gym or wherever the stage is at whatever school you were enrolled in or whatever school you were teaching at. And these presentations just happen, and a lot of them are celebratory. Is that fair? Have you been in that situation?
I really have this kind of topic, separate my just really deeply embedded, negative, cynical viewpoint about public education because of my, thing with it when I was a student, right? Because like I became a fully qualified teacher and I really saw positive examples of like, great teachers, motivated kids, and, all the rest of it. But like my experience as a student was feeling like a misfit a lot, feeling alienated, feeling like I just wanted to leave, be anywhere else. And to me, those assemblies were just like, geez, man, like I'd rather be getting my teeth cleaned because at least I know it'll be over in an hour, I just really like, there's nothing just like being like, or having like nicotine withdrawal as a teenager, right? Because that's how rad I was during one of those assemblies. It's like, ugh, I should just skip this thing and accept the detention, Anyway, that's my feeling. You say school assemblies to me, that's what I start to think.
So that did not reflect the comprehensive enrollment at your school.
No. Just me and my little miscreant pals for the most part. Yeah.
I remember the first thing I would do was tell my students, do not get my attention because then you're stuck with me. So it's one of those things. I would do the point. You come here.
I got the Gorilla Glue. I'm going to, it's like what sticks to me sticks to you. That's
Yep. You're spending the rest of the day glued to my side.
Unless your parents call you with an excuse to get you out of this thing, you are just shackled. We may as well just call you Shackleton because you're going to be so shackled.
So sometimes, but it needs to be good. It can't just be, oh yeah, congratulations, there you go. Here's a Word document that I printed out to look like a certificate. There, done. There's our celebration. No, that it's got to be real. It's got to mean something.
Got to be authentic, to use a term.
Yeah, authentic is a great term for that.
Yep.
And what I really wanted to take a look at is I'm jumping ahead because I'm going quick with these right now because I want to talk about what we've done. So I wanted to get the groundwork in. This feels like the abstract and the introduction to the paper.
We're scaffolding our ways from, if you will, ontology, a theory and of knowledge, through to epistemology, which is a theory of, ontology is the theory of being, epistemology is the theory of knowing, right? So you progress from various level of abstraction all the way down to the concrete, practical, and actionable. So then you get to the theoretical realm, then you get to the practical realm, then you get to the specific instances of the case. But if you don't have that whole superstructure and all those layers of the cake or fossil record or genetic history, however you prefer to think of it, whatever metaphor toots your chain, it's like, well, it's going to be empty. It's just practice without anything to inform it, just kind of flaps in the wind. And then you're getting budgetary decisions, which result in, say, 12.5 smart boards sitting in a closet in your school unused, right? It's kind of, anyway, broader context, folks. That's one thing I keep kind of hoping we hit at repeatedly on the show, come to think of it.
Sorry, you just reminded me of when I helped implement iPads into some northern communities. And we had a big session and we did all this stuff in all these different classrooms. And then they were supposed to come back 2 months later and do show and tells with us. And one guy's like, no, I want to learn more. They've sat on a shelf. I haven't touched them.
Dang.
And it's like, oh, you're killing me, man. I have nothing prepared because you were supposed to do this work.
It was about the creation of knowledge by you, right? Even like capturing knowledge that has been created. And I mean, if it's sort of like if it can't manifest yet through the media, then the concept and the conceptual underpinning needs to be iterated further, I suppose. Yeah. So to use an instructional design kind of way of looking at it. Dang, we're friggin' relevant, man. I mean, we're just kind of, well, we improvise, and we have this very conversational flow, and we're just total goofballs, and we say stupid and controversial sometimes things, but I mean, ultimately, it's just like, well, I mean, I've been sipping this Kool-Aid for 2 decades ish. You've been sipping it since you were like just hatched because your parents were involved in stuff, right? So I mean,
that's it.
So I'm basically, what I find with these podcasts, for another total digression, both this and the other one, is I'm like, it's like I have some vague ideas, like, well, podcast, but just me, forget about it. I mean, it's just that would be boring as hell. Just to watch one person do stuff, no thanks, even a bit. But so then I'm like, I benefit because I tend to have, by choice, really smart, creative people around me. And I'm like, I can actually scope out somebody who's got like additional aspects, that I'm not with in my regular thing. So I think both of these podcasts, the one and the music one that I do with Dan, have benefited tremendously from that. I just sort of like, I'm this little, what we call it, the little, feeder fish that attaches itself near the mouth of the larger fish and kind of flowing scraps that go past, and then the feeder of the larger fish starts to shrivel up and kind of.
I'm not buying any of that imagery. That is not what it is.
Have you seen it though? Like you should. It's really worth a Google. Like the fish that actually like attaches itself to the tongue of the fish. Like,
aren't they remore? Isn't that the name of the fish?
I won't even attempt to pretend to know.
They're the ones that go in and like pick the bits out of the teeth so that it doesn't get rotten and.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Nature is brutal. In case you didn't know, dude. Do we? So we're.
I'm going to jump to 2016.
The reference list here. Please do.
Yes. Nemini and Hatulainen, they're 2 Finnish researchers, and they're talking about enhancing students' sense of belonging through celebrations. And it's important that celebrations also strengthen the cognitive aims on the curriculum and provide successful learning environments with a sense of joy and social participation. What we just described in our experience with with assemblies in schools is not what that was. There is a positive way to do it. Neither of our examples did that.
You were like you're like this. You expressed that from like the teacher standpoint of like a committed, dedicated educator, because that you spent enough time kind of in that role. Whereas I just immediately went into student mode, and that's just kind of interesting, right? Again, I guess if I was to talk about like assemblies within higher education, when I worked, I guess notably in Qatar, because it was like the most straight up college setting. In fact, it's a college. I spent a good amount of time there, and but then it's like adults. It's like I don't have to supervise anybody. I go to skills competition. It's cool, or I help adjudicate a public speaking thing, folks. Or even being able to contribute to the English language components of business cases. When I look at other disciplines outside of education, just for like educational practices that I think are legit cool, I think our colleagues in the field of business have made such a profound use of the case study approach, and it seems, from what I can tell, really embedded in very important ways into like MBAs and their BBA kind of programming and everything else, right? It's interesting to kind of observe, because I did my doctorate, speaking of successes, using like the case study approach, not a business case study, but educational case study methodology, which is like, it's kind of own thing. And I don't know. I like areas of overlap. Venn diagrams make me smile. Anyway, dude, totally unwarranted and unacceptable side jaunt there, dude.
as part of our successes, I am still challenged to figure out how we can do a podcast and talk about Venn diagrams for an hour.
Jesus
Because I
H.
have so many that I want to do, and I don't want to be the guy that says, here's what's in this circle and here's what's in that circle. If we could figure out a way to do that presentation, I would.
We should really just have an episode entirely about Venn diagrams, apart even from like educational content, like just in praise of the VD, you know. It's
the VD.
The VD episode. Oh God. Anyway.
Yeah.
There's a place in Ed Tech hell, and I've already crossed over there, you know, some time ago, I think. So, sorry, Ed Tech God, I suppose. It's Sunday. Anyway, dude.
So with these Finnish researchers, when they were talking about how celebrations can help strengthen the cognitive aims of the curriculum, I remember as a teacher, I would go to my students and say, here's the game plan. Here's what we need to do this week, or here's what we need to do this month, or whatever it happens to be. Let's plan the celebration now for us succeeding. And this is what success looks like, and describe what success looks like. And I remember one class, I said, what do you want the celebration to be? Right? Do you want, like, and we had kids with peanut allergies, and we had kids with gluten, you know, all that stuff. And then one kid said, can we just take the afternoon and do phys ed outside? We'll save all our phys eds for the whole week, and we'll do them at one time, and we'll do them out on the playground. And
that's actually a pretty damn good idea.
Yeah. And I didn't realize, so we did that, and the kids were motivated to learn. They got their work done. Everybody was engaged. It was fantastic. I didn't realize that the other grade 5 class was doing some stuff at lunchtime, and they were kind of being unpleasant to my grade 5 class. And so these kids went out on the playground, my students went out on the playground, and they were so freaking loud for the entire afternoon. And they were loud on purpose to wind up the kids that were still in class, the other class. And once I realized it, I was like,
that's
okay,
that's an example of what you call the hidden curriculum, folks, right there. That's
yeah. But it was how do we tie the celebration in? How do we reward them? How do we say, well done, what a great job? And finding a way makes a difference. And why can't more post-secondaries do that?
No kidding.
Why is it just same old, same old? That reminds me of the Tetris image that I shared down below.
Okay.
Right? Because if you've ever played Tetris, you play Tetris.
Actually, Tetris is like one of the few video games that, like, if you gave me the opportunity, like if I could hook up some Tetris right now, I would enjoy the shit out of that for like up to 30 minutes. It would be pure bliss. So yeah, man, dig the Tetris. Yeah, and the image that I shared talks about how, you know, when you put one of those 4-piece ones straight down and boop, 4 rows disappear. It's like, yeah, there's your accomplishment. Your accomplishment just disappeared. So instead of having that disappear, wouldn't it be great if Tetris went the other way and it gave you 4 rows above? So you get to see everything you finished at the bottom, and you could scroll down and see all the stuff you've done. But at the top, it just gets taller and taller and taller and taller. So I think then perhaps that might call for rather starting with a full block slate and then moving various configurations of negative space. Yeah. Potentially. You're basically inverting the concept of the game, which, I don't know, that would be post-Tetris. That would be, yeah, that's an interesting postmodern Tetris, but maybe maybe Tetris is already pretty postmodern. I have to think on that, son. That sounds like it might be another the video game episode. You know, choose your 5 favorite EdTech gamified apps and just have a blutter about such. Could be a thing. Yeah, absolutely, we could. Sky's the limit. Anyways. So this next article, the last one that I've got here, Kazar and Elrod,
2020. It's called Taken for Granted, Improving the Culture of Celebration, Appreciation, and Recognition in Higher Ed. Now, when I look at those concepts, the research is really clear. Celebration, appreciation, and recognition helps with, surprise, surprise, motivation, morale, and performance. This is not rocket surgery. This is really simple stuff.
You heard it here first, folks. It is not rocket surgery.
And why don't we do it? Why doesn't this happen? Why? This is one reason why we got to 50, and I was like, damn right, I want to celebrate. And this is, I believe, the 200th article that we have talked about. I need to go back and check, but I'm pretty sure this is number 200. So we have 200 articles that we have referenced and discussed.
Have you been keeping this like in a running, have you been keeping the references then in a running document of sorts, or what, dude? I'm curious.
Yeah. I'm that guy. I am absolutely that guy.
I'm looking forward to, like, if we, dear book publishers, if you ever wanted to throw money at us for a book version of this thing, Doug has got, you know, resources that are going into this that it's good, because I'd have to scrape all that stuff from the WordPress posts, right? So I would anyway, because you've got 200 of your very good resources. But I mean, I probably, if I'm sort of going to compare, which I tend to prefer not to do, I probably got, you know, up to a third of that amount that I've thrown in, or maybe like more like a quarter. But still, right? I mean, that's the difference between like 200 and 250. Pretty damned high quality, and in some cases exceedingly current resource. You know, stuff that's from 1927 or 1890, if you're talking about gramophone cylinders and whatnot. We haven't gotten into like the birth of wet plate photography yet, or something as an educational medium, but I suppose we totally
You want
could.
to? I would love to do that.
I'm just like, what obscure formats haven't we really gotten into yet? I mean, the tin can and the string, we haven't quite hit that yet. I don't know,
have
man.
a former colleague.
Speculate.
I have a former colleague that does that printing, the chemicals right on metal and stuff, that tin type. Like, she takes pictures and
really
she does it.
friggin', or like, you know, the metal plate even photography,
Yeah.
right? Like, that's
Yeah.
just like, I mean, I've been known to take a recreational snapshot or a dozen and throw them on Instagram. And if I was like serious about actually, you know, becoming a photographer as opposed to just somebody with a cell phone, that's where I would be interested to sort of look at it, because what I've really found, you know, as I sort of get more experience assembling visual images apart from the composition, really my sense of texture in a photograph has started to change as somebody who sort of practices photography, in as much as I'm looking for photographic moments. And that's one thing about being back in the Maritimes. I mean, just brick and fog and stone and just concrete and just whatever. It's just, you know, it's a really tactile kind of vibe. And you start to kind of get into trying to, like in these Cormac McCarthy books that I just finished up, and we talked about this on the show, right? Synesthesia, right? Blending or cognitively compressing to, or not compressing, but overlaying, right, characteristics of sensory experiences on top of each other. So like, what does that photo smell like, right? It actually, or whatever, what's the texture of it like? So synesthetic kind of experiences, right? You sort of start looking for that stuff. So rambly bambly, man, we gotta.
So what I'm going to ask you now is totally to put you on the spot.
Sure.
Could you name a couple of successes with this podcast or things that have come from the podcast that you're thinking, isn't this cool? Or isn't it great that we got to do that? Or isn't it great that led to this?
In terms of between where we started and where we, are now, I'd just like to give a very significant shout out to my excellent colleague, Dr. Pam Gurney at Thompson Rivers University, because she went to some great effort to track me down, and she really was very interested in having me / us, speak on the Learning About Learning class and that was something like when I was at Thompson Rivers. I mean, I know I have like this borderline thing where I'm just super critical and whatever, because I got a bumpy ride. I think that's kind of normal. But
I think that's understatement. Yes.
So I mean, just having said that, it sort of speaks to an awesome colleague who just like, well, forget all that. You and I had a cool, working collegial kind of relationship, and it's just kind of nice to be able to step into that, where this kind of podcast endeavor provides an opportunity to kind of close things out in a weird way on a pretty stressful personal and professional episode of some half decade plus in my life, right? So I just again say thanks, Pam, for the invite. I enjoyed the heck out of being able to do that immensely, and I'm looking very forward in a couple of weeks' time. Basically 2 weeks. To having the opportunity to do an education, an ed non-tech conversation. I'll be in conversation with a mystery guest on the topic of education, diversity, and inclusion in education for a different number of classes. And the person I've got lined up for that, assuming they don't step away from it, well, if they did. But I don't think it's going to happen, and I'm looking forward to that very much. So I think probably I won't even necessarily speak to more than that, just because I feel, that particular case speaks to a lot of other things that I could speak to. It's, a signifier of a lot of other stuff for me that's positive about the show.
Right on.
Yeah, man. How about you?
I love, of all the stuff we've come up with, one thing I really love is getting to explore the literature on purpose.
For sure.
If that makes sense, because I can go read it, but that's where it ends if it's just me, because right now my job doesn't involve having to do a lot of sharing of this level of information. And I'm not really in a publishing role right now.
Right.
So this gives me a chance to have these conversations with you. Being a social constructionist, I need to have that conversation to help build the knowledge. And finding some things like the word lagging. Right? We both love language. And to find out words like lagging, flotsam, jetsam, derelict, like all of that way back when. That was jeepers, 15
quite some
months
time
ago.
That's like we're talking the first 6 months of the show. Yeah.
And just the concept of lagging. It's goods that have sank to the bottom of the water and are tethered by a marker to potentially be recovered. And that really describes so much of the topics that we came up with. So I really love that. And I love how you've given me the opportunity to like creatively pick whatever the topics are going to be. And you're cool with that part of it. So having a collaborator that actually wants to collaborate and doesn't want to, this is my bit, that is your bit. Yeah, those boundaries would have driven me bonkers. But
the things that I value the most in my life, like pretty much any of it, is the result of being in like a 50-50 kind of creative deal whether it's in a personal way or a professional way or in whatever area. The things that I value the most in my life, my kids, like my teaching and education career, any of it has been the direct result of collaboration with one other person or a bunch of other people. And the higher quality people that you seek out and try and actually proactively work with, I mean, the result, it again, to speak to the Pareto principle, what you do is you find the 20% of the people who are like 80% creative and in sync, wherein it complements or adds, in my case, because I'm the feeder fish in the mouth of the trout, that enhances significantly in various ways what you do, right? So, I mean, I just figure critical discernment, and again, it's like I'm in a spot too, similar to you, where in my current professional thing, like academic resources are outside the immediate scope of the role. But I just feel like if you're not doing ongoing professional reading and ongoing professional development, you're just kind of dragging along passively in the current, if you will. I mean, that's not how I live. That's never how I have been interested in carrying myself. So I really, just in terms of your wagon language, I'll just take the opportunity now to, as opposed to shouting out Marcus Aurelius all the time lately, I just got to say these books, The Passenger and Stella Maris by Cormac McCarthy, they came in this beautiful box. They were written, over the same time or one after the other. They were the last two things that Cormac wrote before he died. And there's just some really significant and beautiful underwater significance and imagery relative to, it put me in the mind of what you were talking about, the overall metaphor, if you will, the intentional scavenging of slag or whatnot, right? So.
Mm-hmm. So do you have a favorite episode of all the episodes, or a favorite topic that we've covered?
Nah, man, I legitimately don't. And I think probably because each of them for me has been a large amount. I mean, we do the talking part of it, which is rad, and the conversation part of it that's rad. Of my creative involvement with it comes through assembling it, vis-a-vis tracking down the Unsplash stuff, tracking down the sound clips, putting it into a PowerPoint slide, putting it into WordPress, throwing the stuff into Camtasia, that whole, like, I've got it down cold now in terms of like a cognitive routine, but like every single time I do it, it's different. So it's like it's going through the same kind of neuro pathways, but like it's a completely different blast of endorphins or whatever, because it's always different images. It's always different. And like what I appreciate about creativity, what I think tends to make creativity more dynamic, is if you can throw in more random variables, more unpredictability into an established process. So for instance, again, when I download a bunch of the stuff from Unsplash for the pictures, and then I throw them into Camtasia, the order that they land in Camtasia and sequence them isn't like what I would have downloaded them as in the order. And I just sort of like drag it, whatever's closest and whatever's going to get the clip done the fastest, because time efficiency is a strong part of my process. So I'm just, I leave that aspect of it to basically the algorithm, such as it is. So like when I'm sort of saying, well, Doug, you're the topics guy, I'm giving the thing that's going to inform my process over to something that is completely outside of my control, effectively. And that's part of what makes my creativity thrive, is like having those points that are random variables or whatnot, and accommodating them each time in a different way is what makes them each a special snowflake. No different, different, similar but different from each other, which is a long ass, kind of dodgy way of answering your question. No, I don't have a favorite episode.
Your answer makes me feel so good, because my favorite episode is whatever one we're working on right now.
There you go.
And
good answer.
I didn't want to be corny.
Yeah,
but man. It's like, okay, what are we tackling today? Cool. Yep. Let's go. Let's do it. Let's see what's happening.
It's like that Bob Dylan documentary by Sam Peckinpah back in the day, in the early stages of his career. Maybe you've heard of it. It's called Don't Look Back.
Yes. Yeah.
Right after when Bob Dylan went electric, the film shot in black and white. It shows him on this jaunt, kind of when he was kind of at the height of his fame in the early years, part of his career, late 60s sometimes. I want to say like 67 or 68 or something, whenever the hell Dylan went electric. Yeah, man, it's just don't look back. Don't, whatever's behind you, it's there. You can jump to it any friggin' time. The Stoics, Stoic philosophers are basically to the effect that doesn't even exist anymore. It's going to be swallowed up into oblivion, friggin' in less than an instant. And the moment that you express something, the moment it passes into expression, it's already part of the past. So the only thing you got is really what's in front of you, because otherwise it's just part of the yawning void of non-existence, which is awesome. I think it's a very awesome way to think about life, actually. So
now I'm going to put a twist on that for myself, because I love reading the Stoic stuff, and I'm on board with it, because there was times when I needed it. I just needed it to survive. Have you ever seen that little internet meme about the guy that comes out of his garage, goes into the house, and he says, hey, that piece of wood I put in the garage in 2004? I used it today. I knew I was going to need that. And see, I wasn't wasting my time. I used it. That's what my digital clutter, my digital curation is for me. I love the stuff that I collected back in the day, and I love being able to tie it to these current topics and these current discussions that we've got. So that's part of I'm not looking back that way. I'm looking back to say, what treasures have I collected that I can share now?
There you go. You're taking signifiers and resources and former ways of looking at the world that are sort of embedded into the placement of the artifact into some sort of sorting system, if you will, and to be then reintegrated with new purpose and new purposiveness, which may be considered different from each other, because we're keeping it legit and real despite the punk t-shirts and cornball jokes. I got to remind myself of that. I've got this lame ass friggin' underachiever kind of complex that I kind of started to feel and start to even to cultivate going back to when I was just small. Like, it's just so, it's like I'm just like, I'm doing a good job, right? Self, like, So again, this show really helps scratch the itch of like, well, otherwise, what the fuck? I'm just going to be, but. So
I do.
Dude, we're getting on in the thing, actually. We got 54 minutes on this recording so far. Do you want to go over to any more of your images before we get on to the question, phrase, and word of the podcast?
Sure. They're for the listeners.
Yep.
This is the random stuff that I have tied to the concepts of celebration and the concepts that I was thinking about it, and how you can look at celebrating and how you can look at finishing things. The one that I'm just going to talk about is a Men Wanted advertisement in the newspaper. And it says, Men wanted for hazardous journey, small wages, bitter cold, long months of complete darkness, constant danger, safe return doubtful. Honor, recognition in case of success. And that was from Ernest Shackleton, looking for people to hire. And Shackleton is the guy that famously spent a bunch of time in Antarctica. And this makes me feel a bit like what we did. Because, yeah, the wages have been pretty small. There have been some hazards in the journey, right? There have been long months of darkness, right? We live in Canada. There's a lot of darkness. And
we're going full on metaphorical here, folks.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think it's neat because I didn't even look at the images yet that you have that, and I was referring to like Shackleton, like shackled to the kid in the earlier thing. So these are just kind of like you spend enough time, on a similar, creative endeavor with somebody, and then within the context of that, you just start having these kind of flare-ups of just like not shared consciousness necessarily, but just like these musicians who play over night after night at a show to the point that you don't even need a set list anymore. Here's looking at you, Fugazi. Yes, doubtless of safe return, right? Mars. Don't let Elon Musk send people to Mars. And if you do, I could just, Anyway, you got some other radical visual ephemera here.
Yeah.
Do you want to speak to any of that before we get into the other aspects of the show, before we start to close her down?
There's one image I added to the Google Doc that I just added because I know people don't see the behind the scenes, they just see the finished product.
Yeah.
And last weekend we tried to record. Yesterday we tried to record. Now it's Sunday night and we're getting it done, right? Because welcome to life. Life happens, right? This happens to be the time change day. I don't want to go on a rant about the stupidity of why time changes happen.
I'm like, are you happy now, farmers? You got your hour back, farmers. Okay.
So everything, all the other images are about celebrations and that sort of thing. And then there's one about the time change because that's just the day we're recording on. That it doesn't necessarily have to be anything.
Well, let's just throw one more factoid to personalize this old dang educational thingy. One more aspect, one more layer of the rainbow cake, if you will. So what do we got there for the word of the podcast, sir?
Word of the podcast is celebrate. Nice and simple, very to the point. We mentioned it a bunch of times. Question of the podcast.
Yeah.
The question is, how shall we guarantee success to be celebrated? We have to celebrate our successes. We just have to. I remember I never cared about my birthday for years and years. Didn't really care. And then I had one birthday where I was in Australia. Nobody noticed. Nobody I worked with, none of my family, nobody noticed. So I had a day. Now, when it's my birthday, I freaking celebrate because I have the community and the people. And it's like, why not? Why not have a good day? Why not have a cake? Why not go do that wacky thing? Let's go to a movie at 2 p.m. Whatever it is, go celebrate. Go do it. And the phrase of the podcast is pretty damn high quality and current. Because you said that in one of your
one of my many tangents, basically tangents.
That's
I just go after them, folks. It's like I see her. It's like I got a limited attention span, and I'm just like, there's a rabbit, and I'm gonna follow that rabbit to whatever absurd point I can possibly take it, and I'm gonna trust that other people around me will defer to the format, to defer to the limitations of the format, to sort of ensure that we don't get so bound up in the weeds that we lose the sight of the beach for the rocks. Ha! Dang. Anyways, to prove a point, as a matter of fact. Cool, man. I enjoy this. This has been a good celebratory kind of vibe here. Like I see, you got some metadata, which we're going to plug into the old WordPress. To answer a question which you put into the notes of the episode that isn't this one, if you wanted the comprehensive thingy, the list of the metadata categories, you can simply go to the WordPress landing page, and if you scroll, it's on one of those sidebars on the right, and it's just got like a list of every single category. I'm aware probably that we should be I should be differentiating between a category and a tag, but at this point, I just can't be chuffed to do so, basically. So, anything else, man? Anything else you want to throw out here before we kind of put her to rest for another episode?
No, thanks for being a good partner.
Likewise,
Forward to the next
dude.
one.
As ever, thanks to anybody who's checking this out in any of our formats whatsoever. Even if you don't make it through an entire thing, even if you just check it out for a little bit and decide it's not for you, we appreciate it mightily and greatly. Thanks a lot for making this a dialogue, not just between Doug and myself. I think we both appreciate that a lot, right?
Absolutely.
Oakley doke. Catch you later, people. Bye.
Okay, see ya.